and welcome to a frozen Sunday here from Digital Photo Mentor. I'm Darlene, and it's actually not frozen where we are. It's pretty nice right now. So we're going to be looking at editing some images that relate to frozen today. So I suggested in an email to my subscribers that frozen can mean a lot of things. It can mean, obviously, snow and ice. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's winter right now. It could also mean frozen in midair, such as the title says, frozen in time. So it could even be, sports, a ball frozen in the air, water frozen in the air with a fast shutter speed, that kind of thing. So most of the images that I received, and thank you everybody for sending your images last minute. I got a bunch again, so we'll have enough to do another winter themed editing another week. And I've got lots of great images to work with. So let's just say hello to who is in the chat. Lots of regulars, and I saw some new names coming in on images today. So if you are here for the first time, welcome. Danelle, I'm glad you're able to watch again as well. Manfred is in the house. Catherine, looking forward to this one, she says. I didn't see any of your images though, Catherine. Deb, I think I have some of your images from previously, so I know you've got some snowy pictures from up in Alaska. Mickey, Marguerite, I've got some of yours. Stephanie, I think I have some of yours from last year, actually. Thunderstorms predicted. David from Ottawa. Merle, Michigan. Beautiful fall day in Michigan. Awesome. Let's see. Neil, have you joined us before? I think you've joined us before, right? Brenda, are you new to watching our live stream? If you are new here, tell us how you found out about it. And also, did you bring a friend today? Because remember last week I asked everybody to bring a friend. So who brought a friend today and who's your friend? So introduce your friend if you brought a friend. Welcome, Kathleen. I don't remember seeing your name before. Philippines. Awesome. Welcome. Neil's new. Awesome. Welcome, Neil. How did you find out about the live stream? Did you get my email? Did you see it on social media? Let us know how you're finding us, because we want to find more lovely people just like you. If you are new to the chat, if you are new here for the first time, enter a number 1 in the chat so that I know how many people here are here for the first time. Your first time, number 1. Enter a number 1 now. So, Jan, I think you are new as well. I've got your images. Welcome from Netherlands. Charlene. Oh, Jan's a 1. Awesome. Thank you. And Manfred sent the link on his Facebook. Thank you so much, Manfred. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Awesome. Jan, Dada's vlog, analog to digital. Awesome. So lots of newcomers. Welcome. So what we're going to do, yes, Jan is new. What we're going to do today is edit some frozen images. So I've got a bunch in here. And what I've done is I've sorted them into Lightroom and Luminar based on what everybody has said they are using. So let me just change my format here. Right. So I use a little system of color coding, and that's one of the benefits of Lightroom is I can add colors as well as pics like flags and ratings to images in Lightroom. So if you see your images in yellow, that means I'm going to use Lightroom because you recommended or you said that's what you use. If you see them in blue, that's Luminar Neo. Purple is Photoshop. And green is either. So Sheila uses both Lightroom and Luminar. So I've got a few images here that I want to use as demonstration because people had some specific questions about them. And I don't know if Steve is watching, but Steve Carr sent a number of images, and he's a really amazing photographer. And he sent some great images. It looks like maybe from even Antarctica or something he's got, or Iceland. He's got some icebergs, but we're going to talk about some specific problems, and I want to start with this one first about working with images of snow and ice, because a lot of the questions I got was, how do I make it look less dull and flat. So Charlene, we've got your image and you are here. So I'm actually going to start with this one. And even though she said she's working in Luminar, I'm going to go back and forth between both because the technique to fix that problem works in both. You just have to use slightly different tools. Okay, so develop in Luminar and of course the basic panel in Lightroom. Okay, so the thing that she mentioned in her question was that she didn't want it to be so flat. Okay, so what does flat mean? First of all, let's define that. Does anybody know what flat means? Okay, so flat is when you're looking at the histogram, there's not a lot of contrast, meaning it's not spread out. Okay, and the colors are sort of looking gray. So the middle of the histogram, remember, is gray, the left is black, and the right is white. So if everything's looking kind of grayish, we need more stuff on the outsides. Okay, so how do we do that? Yes, Stephanie, exactly. No contrast. So flat is no contrast. Okay, so you'll often hear that term. But I like to define things for people because if you're new to photo editing or photography in general, you may not know what flat means and what that's referencing, right? So how do we fix flat? Okay, so I'm going to take this one into Luminar because that's what she uses. Let me just hop over to the right collection here. And I'm going to find that image. Where's the branches? Did I go right past it? Where are her branches? Oh, this one. Is that blue? Yes. Okay, so I forgot to mark this one. So I also mark these in using Luminar. Okay, so when we go into Luminar to fix this problem, and I'm going to do the same thing in Lightroom in a moment. Okay, so when we go into Luminar, into the edit panel, you want to start with develop raw. Okay, so she sent me a raw file, right? I forget what format it was now. It is a CR3, so I believe that's a Canon file. Yeah, Canon ESM, right? So that's a Canon file. And when you working with the raw file in Luminar, if you have a raw file and you're in develop raw right here, you'll see the camera profiles. This is the only place you can get to camera profiles and the only time you can see this. Okay, so you can hover over these and you'll see how it changes. And immediately I had an idea of doing this image as a black and white, but I don't want to choose the monochrome profile. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to choose landscape just to give it a little bit more punch. And then I'll do a black and white conversion a different way, okay? Because there's very little color here. It's almost a little bit bluish, but I think it would make a nice black and white, okay? And she wanted to know how to fix the contrast, right? So now when we look at the histogram, you can see it's not touching the left, meaning no black, and it's not touching the right, meaning no white. When you open the curves panel, Rob, if you could please share a link to the video that I did on curves. I believe it was done in Luminar AI, but the technique is still the same. Curves is curves is curves, okay? You'll see the same histogram here in the curve. So on the left is black. So if I want to have some black, I'm just going to tuck this in until it starts touching where the data is. And then I'm going to do the same over here, right? Now, there isn't an easy way to do, like, you can't hold your option key down and see clipping. So if you want to see clipping, meaning what's going off the edge of the graph, just press J on your keyboard. Rob, if you could please share a link to the Luminar Neo keyboard shortcuts cheat sheet. If you'd like to get the cheat sheet, Rob's going to put a link for you, and you can download my PDF cheat sheet and print it out and have it handy for you, because I use keyboard shortcuts a lot. So what that did was it activated the clippings. Okay, so now if I go in further, you can start to see highlighted in this bright blue color where the blacks are off the edge of the graph, and you can start to see it there. Okay, so I want to have a little bit of black clipping, but not too much. And then I don't want any white clipping. So I'm going to go until it clips and then back it off a little bit. But in this case, if I'm going to go black and white and the sky is kind of blah anyways, I might override that and just add a lot more contrast. Let the sky go completely white because I'm not concerned about the sky. I want nice detail in the snow, okay? And in order to have detail in your snow, you need to have different shades, right? So you need to have white, gray, and so on. And then I'll maybe bring the highlights down a little bit. So I'm not concerned about that sky, okay? So now I've done that, okay? I can increase the shadows if I want and push the contrast here even more, okay? So smart contrast. So see what I mean by flat contrast, okay? Take your sliders all the way to extremes and see what they do, okay? Just see what happens. So I'm adding a little bit of contrast there. I might add a little bit of sharpness here. And that's about it on this section, okay? The next thing I want to do to make it pop more is to just crop it, because I've got some things sticking in on the top here, and there's a lot of sort of empty sky. So I'm going to see what Luminar thinks is a good crop using the composition AI. So it'll analyze the image and come in a little bit, but I find that you usually have to move it around, right? So we could actually crop off this whole thing on the right, and I like that idea, but I don't want to crop off any further here. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to change this to free, first of all. So I want the full bottom. I'm going to come in a little bit more. And we could always clone this out right later as well. So if I want to leave a little bit more space, I can. Okay. Something like that. But I want the top of this branch here. Okay. I want to make sure I've got the top of this one. And I can deal with that one another way also. Okay. So I'm cropping for effect. Okay. Maximum effect. If you didn't see the cropping video that we did a few weeks ago, the live, please share a link for that, Rob. It was over 2 hours of tips on cropping for better composition, and there was a lot of value there. So check that one out if you haven't seen that one. So now Rob has shared both Lightroom and Luminar keyboard shortcuts. And I've applied the crop. Okay, I see a question by Marguerite. Can I get camera profiles in Neo if I bring an image over from Lightroom and Photoshop? No, because you don't get develop raw that way. You would be doing your camera profile in Lightroom first, Marguerite. Good question. Okay, so now that I've done that, I would use the erase tool to clean up these edges a little bit, like this thing here. I'm not going to go crazy with this. I'm just going to do a couple of quick erases and then see what it does. You could also try the new Gen Erase. I think people are going crazy with the new Gen Erase, trying to erase things that are quite simple like this. Like, just use the erase tool. See, it did a really great job. Right? You could even use the clone tool in this case because it's not a complicated job. Right? Gen Erase is for stuff that's a little bit trickier to remove. Right? So it's kind of erasing it. There we go. Okay, so just from the before and after, so we can see what I want you to take away from this one is how to make it not flat. Okay, so by increasing the contrast, but controlling the black point and the white point, you have more control of doing that and how you arrange it on the histogram versus just the contrast slider. Okay, so I don't use the contrast slider all that much. I tend to use the blacks and the whites or the curves, right? So curves, you're literally pulling in the blacks and the whites. And then if you want more detail, Luminar has great tools for adding details like structure. And if you don't want it on the sky, of course, you can just paint it into the snow where you want it using a mask. In this case, I would probably just use a brush, maybe a large one, and I would just paint over the parts that I want to have more structure, like so. Maybe this area. Okay. And then if you think you want to do the same on another one, just copy it. And then we can add some details. I zoom in a little bit. Okay. You can see what medium details is doing. You can see what large does. Okay. Sharpen and small details. Small details you have to be careful with. It will make a lot of grain if you're not careful. Right? So then I'm just going to paste in that mask. Okay. See what that's doing. And you can see from flat to contrast. Okay. So I hope that helps you with some contrast. And then if we want to do black and white, we can just do black and white. The other option is you could do a sky replacement and try something different. But as I always recommend, when you're doing a sky replacement, be really careful about what kind of sky you choose, okay? Because this is overcast, right? You can clearly see that it's overcast. So putting something in with big fluffy blue clouds isn't going to make sense, right? If Luminar can even figure out where the sky is, let's just see. It's not going to make sense, because if you have a big fluffy blue clouds in the blue sky with fluffy clouds, not fluffy blue clouds, the light would be different. See, and it's picking up a lot in here in the snow as well, because it's having a hard time distinguishing the difference between the snow and the sky. But this kind of sky would would not be appropriate, right? So if you're going to add a sky replacement, pick something that is appropriate. For example, here's one of my skies, maybe like this. No, there's not really anything that I have that's appropriate. Let's try this one. You need something cloudy, and it should be more in the background. I got a frog in my throat. So we'll defocus it because we don't want the sky in focus. And there's a whole other lot of stuff about this sky. We'd have to do a lot of masking to fix it. Honestly, I would just make this black and white. I don't think the sky replacement is working. I would just go black and white and keep it fairly dramatic. Something like that. Okay. So black and white works great on winter pictures. Right? So let's hop back to Lightroom. Any questions about that? You missed the small branches on the right. So as in you want them back over here. I find that things on the edges of pictures, Danelle, are really distracting. So the little branches there kind of bugged me, right? So if we go back a step before I did the erase, okay, this little thing right here really bothers me. Okay, so if I'm going to leave it, I would crop a lot wider. So don't just leave a little tiny bit. Do you mean you want more of the image on the right? So that's up to you. You know, if it's your image, then if you want to keep more to keep it balanced, I can totally see that. But watch out for things like, you know, this guy at the top here, and things that are just sticking into the edge of the image. Okay. So now I want to come back to Lightroom. Oops. I'm using the wrong keyboard shortcuts. So L in Luminar Neo takes me back to catalog, but in Lightroom it goes to lights out. So I have to switch my brain over to the different shortcuts. Okay, so I want to show you the same thing. So when we have an image of snow, and I'm going to pick on Steve because he's not here. He sent his images for me to use, right? So when we have an image of snow and ice like this, your histogram should be more over on the right, okay? So you should be seeing stuff on the right, because over there is where white and light colors are, right? So right now, what this histogram is telling me is that the tones start at medium gray and go darker, and that's not what is appropriate, right, for snow and ice. We need to have more white. We need to have some white, right? So before I do this, I'm going to change the camera profile, and let's try, I'm not sure, I think this is Sony profile. Ooh, look at that, vivid. Well, that color is kind of cool. I want to see what happens if we use that one and then shift some things around. So even just shifting the profile, do you see the histogram jumped? Okay. Now, this is the trick that I always use in Lightroom, and if you've watched before, you'll know this one. It's the shift double-click trick. Do we have a short video on that somewhere, Rob? If we do, you can share that. And I see there's some questions, so I'll come back to that in a moment. So hold the shift key down while you hover over the word white, so not the slider, and then click on the word white, double-click. Okay? And what that does is it pops the white over to the far edge where it is white but not clipping. I feel like that's a little too far, so I'm going to bring that back a little bit. And then do the same on black. So shift, double click, and it sets what's called the endpoints. Okay, so it should give me close to clipping but not, And on the black side, I want to clip. Okay, so let me show you the difference here. I'm just going to do this visually. Okay, so if we start at 0, watch what happens when I increase black. Do you see the color saturation? Right, so I almost never touch the saturation and vibrant sliders unless I'm turning them down, because if you're missing color, you probably just need some more black. Okay. So I really like what that camera profile has done in picking up this color in the ice. But look at that. All we did was camera profile and 2 sliders. Okay, so there's the before and after. Okay, before and after. So let me just do the same thing on a couple of others real quickly. So watch how quickly this goes. Okay, so here's an image. I'm not even going to change the camera profile. I'm just going to do shift double click. Right. Now this one, I need to bring the exposure up a little bit, which is midtones, right? So it looks like this ice thing here is backlit, right? So I'm going to bring this up a little bit, and then I'm going to play with the whites, okay, or the highlights. So I'm using the Alt Option key. When I press it, it shows me clippings, okay? So you can see what's clipping, and then drag it down a bit. Okay, so again, we're just in the basic panel, and we just made 4 adjustments to go from that to that, right? I can do the same thing. Let's find another one that's winter. Okay. Now this one is similar. Okay. Can you see exactly where the spike is on the histogram? Kind of towards lighter tones, but still there's no white. So let's see what the benefit of shift double click is here and here. Right? Look at the difference. That's 2 clicks. Okay. So talking about flat images, you need to set your endpoints. That will make a huge difference when you're dealing with whites. And if we check, we're not clipping any whites, meaning all of this down here has detail. Okay, I can bring it down a bit more, okay, if we want. Bring the highlights down. And then I can actually do shift double click again and sort of just play with it, because I'm increasing the contrast as well. See that? Another question I got is, how do I keep the whites white and not having a shift or color? Okay. If you photographed in RAW, which this one is, this is a Canon RAW file. Okay. This was submitted by Linda. I think this one came in quite a while ago. When you shoot RAW, your white balance settings are here. And these are the same settings that you would have on your camera, right? For presets. So if you shot auto, let's try auto in this case. Auto is the camera trying to analyze the scene and neutralize any color tint. So that's the same here. Okay, so if we go auto, it looks kind of orange to me, right? The other thing you can do in here is obviously choose one of the presets. We can try daylight. That still looks like a weird color. But if you know for sure that something is white, medium gray, or black, okay, gray is tougher, you can use the eyedropper. So we know that the snow should be white, so let's just click on it. So I grab the eyedropper and I click on it. Now we have neutral, okay? So if it looks not neutral, that could be that your monitor is either too warm or too cool. So if it looks really warm on your screen, mine looks neutral. So if you're seeing something right now that looks yellow, that means your monitor is set to yellow, okay? So if you are editing visually and you take the yellow out, your pictures may come out blue. Okay, so if you try to print that and you get a blue image and you're like, well, what the heck happened here? You know, this doesn't match. Also, if stuff's coming back from the lab and it doesn't look the same as your monitor, it's a monitor calibration issue. Okay, so don't just calibrate visually. You need to have a device. If you're going to calibrate, this is the device that I use. It's all tangled up on my desk right now. This is the device that I use. Let me just get my picture bigger, right? This guy here. Rob, if you could please share a link to the kit.co link to this device, please, for everybody. This is what I use for calibrating my monitor, okay? And let me just see, there are some questions. that's the one thing I often miss when taking the photos, all the small things on the edge. That brings up a really good point, Stephanie, is look for that when you're taking the picture too, not just editing. But when you're editing, you have more time, right? You can slow down and take a look at the edges, but that's a good point. So think about that when you are actually photographing, okay? If we had a video about the shift double click trick. Health and a trip that took up 5 months. Well, we're glad to have you back, Danelle. We're glad that you are feeling better if you had some health issues. Do you ever use the trick in Lightroom to take the mouse into the histogram and move the sections lighter or darker? I don't, but I will show you how to do that for people that want to know how to do that. Okay. So what she's talking about is that you can actually grab the histogram. Can you see when I put the mouse there? You can actually grab the histogram and drag. Right. So you can see when you hover over, there's 5 different sections. So blacks, and it says blacks down below here. If you hover, shadows, it says shadows down there, exposure, highlights, and whites. And I wish that it said midtones. Okay. But look what happens when I click this. Okay. So I'm just going to undo this. So when I put my mouse in the middle, so if there's ever any question for people that exposure slider affects the midtones, look where my mouse is. It's in the middle of the histogram, right? And it says exposure. And when I drag it, which slider is moving? Exposure. Okay. So your exposure slider is your midtones. Now look what happens when I did that. We've got a lot more grayness again. Okay. So now I might need to check my whites one more time. Okay. So this is that dance of editing that I talked about. Okay. So you need to adjust one thing and come back and adjust another. Okay. But look at the difference. Right. So that's proper color balance, white balance, and exposure. And that is the huge thing when you're photographing things that are white, like snow. Okay. Because what happens is, if you could please share another article, Rob. Rob's busy today. Oh, sorry about that, Danelle. Thank you for reminding me. If you could please share the link to Why Is My Snow Gray, which is really relevant for today's topic. That will explain a little bit more about the histogram, because the way that your camera meters is it's measuring to make everything that it's pointing at medium gray. And when you're pointing at stuff that is not gray, you end up with an underexposed image if you're shooting something that's white like this. Okay. All right, let's get to another image edit. Okay, let me just sort my filters here for a second. Okay, so here's another good example. Let me pop back over to Luminar because we've got this image of Ken's, and I think Ken is here with us. Ken, are you here? He wanted to know about proper cropping and preventing the snow and ice from looking blue. So we just did that in Lightroom. Let's do that in Luminar because that is his software of choice. So let me find that one. This little one in the snow here. Okay, so assuming again that it's a raw file, we will see develop raw. It doesn't want to recognize it. Oh, it's a JPEG. Aha. Okay, so now you're going to see the difference. Okay, so if this was photographed as a JPEG, if this is the original, when you go into develop, okay, we don't see raw anymore, right? And we don't see the camera profile. Okay, so see the difference? When you've shot JPEG or when you're editing a JPEG, you don't get the camera profile and you don't get camera raw. You also are missing some of the stuff down here as well. It doesn't give you chromatic aberration reduction, okay? But the other thing we're missing is under color, okay? Because if we're working with a raw file, this is where Luminar will have those presets as well. Okay, so here it doesn't give you any other options. Let me just show you the difference. Okay, let me see if there's one that's a raw file. Well, this one we just worked on. Okay, so when we were working on this one and we went into develop raw, okay, the other thing we didn't look at was color. Under the white balance menu, you see that? So we still have those same presets. So whenever you're working on a raw file, you get those presets. Right? When you're working on a JPEG, you lose that ability, right? And whatever white balance you shot it in, that's kind of what you're stuck with. So we got to work with this as is, okay? So let's go into the raw develop again. And let's see if we can use the eyedropper. So here's the eyedropper in Luminar. And let's just click on the snow. Now notice there's lots of different shades of snow. So if I click here, it's going to give me one result versus if I click here, it's going to give me a different result, okay? Because you'll notice that where the sun is hitting the snow, it's got a bit more of a yellow tone, right? And if you hit more in the shadows, right, you're going to get more blue. So if I click the shadows, the overall picture is going to be corrected to yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to go back here. Okay, so notice here the original. So let me explain this again. When you have the eyedropper, if I hover over something blue, it's going to neutralize that blue when I click it, meaning it's going to take blue out by adding the opposite color, which is yellow. Okay, see that? If I click on something that is yellow, watch what happens if I click on her jacket. Okay, so what's the opposite of pink? Does anybody know? Magenta, green. You can, if you're not sure, look at these sliders right here. Okay, opposite of blue is yellow. Opposite of pink is green. So if I click on her jacket, we should get a green picture. And we did. Okay, so you see how that works? Okay, if I click on this brown here, we'll probably get something sort of bluish. Yep. Right? So where you click matters. So I'm going to try and pick the neutral snow, or the snow that should be neutral. It's not in a highlight and it's not in a shadow. So something like that. And that's much better, right? So how to fix that when you're photographing is, I would say, auto white balance is going to get you there most of the time, right? But be careful if you're shooting JPEG, if it gets fooled, okay? So if there is a lot of orange, for example, if you're doing a sunset, it's actually going to take your sunset colors away. I just worked on some of your pictures, Steve. Okay, so that's how we deal with the white balance, right? And in terms of cropping, that was the other question that he had. I don't think I would crop this one at all, actually, because it's got some nice space around her and she doesn't feel crowded, okay? So if we want to check our histogram, we can look at the curves. I could turn on the clipping warnings with the J key. Okay, so I'm going to come in a little bit. See how there's a snow clipping right there? So I'm just going to come in till I get a tiny bit clipping, and then the same on the blacks. And then I can pull the highlights down to get rid of the clipping. And if I want more detail in the blacks, bring up the shadows. Okay. Like so. I would also do a vignette on this one. I do a vignette on just about everything. So I'm darkening the edges a little bit. And that just brings your eye in more to her. Okay. Here's a little trick that actually works really well. If I want to darken the whole picture but brighten her, use this one. Okay, so use the Face AI. And this is a trick that I teach lots. Look at that. Brighten her up. See? So I don't want to brighten the whole image, but just her face. Like so. And then I can also brighten her eyes. But I want to keep talking about winter photos, okay? But with this one here, you also have to be careful when you're photographing in the snow, because you'll get a lot of stuff reflecting up under people's chins, and it can look a little blue on their face as well. Okay? So there's a before and after. All right, let's see. There's a question from Marguerite. Would color grading work well on an image that has a drab sky and a lot of snow? Well, let's have a look. Let's go back to Lightroom. There's a few other things that I wanted to cover in here. Refresh my memory, Marguerite. You are... Which program are you using? I know you sent some images. You're using Lightroom, right? No, you're using... Where's your image? You're using... Okay, so this one, for example, like this one. But you don't have a lot of sky in that one. That one's your image, but you don't have sky. Okay, so let me see your question again. I lost your question. I lost her question. Oh, there it is. Color grading with a drab sky. Okay, well, let's see. Where's one that has a drab sky? Well, I actually already edited this one of Sheila's. That's the one I used on the featured image. Okay, so let's see if we go into the color grading here. Okay, so color grading will allow you to add colors into the highlights or the shadows or the midtones. Right, so in this case, the sky is kind of midtones. Right, so if I say, okay, I'd like to add blue into the midtones, it does kind of work, right? And we sort of get a wintry feel, right? So you can add blue, in this case, into the midtones. And that's actually a great tip, because if you're working with an image like a winter scene and you want it to feel colder, add some blue, okay? You could also add blue into the shadows, okay? So that was midtones, okay? And remember the luminance slider in here, because you can actually darken midtones using this slider as well, right? You can even do it without adjusting the color. Okay, so if you just want to darken your midtones, and then let's say we want to add blue into the shadows. Okay, now we've got blue shadows. Okay, so it's a little bit more subtle, like that. See that? A little too purple. There we go. Great question, Marguerite. Oops, there, I'm doing the wrong keyboard shortcuts again. Okay, now let me see. So this is what I did with yours, Steve. I just brightened them up. I was just using an example of using the curves and the whites and the blacks to just brighten that up, right? Okay, now I wanted to, my mouse is not working right. I wanted to do this one of Jen's, because there's a few that got submitted that were flowers frozen into ice. Speaking of which, I think I was frozen for a second here. Let me see. Am I missing any questions? Coach Mike says, printing to Adobe RGB helps with printing as well. Data Spider Pro is another one. I've tried the spiders in the past, Mike, and I'm not a fan. I prefer the X-Rite, or now that it's called Calibrate, because the thing with the spider is it always tells you to adjust your brightness of your monitor to taste. And maybe the newer ones don't do that, but I've never had as much success or as good luck with the spiders as I have with the other ones, the other brand. And in terms of printing to Adobe RGB, if you're doing that in your own printer, yes, that's true. It'll have more colors, but if your monitor is off color, you'll still have that problem. And if you're sending files to a lab, you need to know whether they print in sRGB or Adobe RGB. For example, if you send to White House Custom Color in the States, for example, they print in sRGB. If you send them Adobe RGB files, you'll actually get off-colored images that look green. So you have to be careful with color spaces. Okay. Face light is awesome, right? I think I did some videos on that too, Rob, if you want to find how I use the face light trick in Luminar Neo to light up group portraits as well. Because actually it's a custom vignette that you can do to now, because you lighten the face and then darken the whole image. It works great. The bluish tint in the sky in Sheila's image. Yeah, that works well, right? Okay, so let me go into this one here. All right, so this one here, Jen mentioned that she uses Lightroom, but also goes to Photoshop to remove things like this thing in the corner here, okay? So I want to address that, but also let's just do the same editing steps, okay? So we're gonna go to Basic. I'm gonna choose a camera profile, okay? So I'm just gonna kind of hover over. I don't mind Vivid in this case. I usually don't go for Vivid because I like to adjust it myself. But I'm going to go for Standard. And then I'm going to do the Shift double click on the whites and the blacks. Okay. Now, immediately you can see that the color has been punched up as well, right? I'm going to do the eyedropper to get some white, because this background should be neutral. Okay. So it picked off a little bit of green, a little bit less green. Okay, and I'm going to add some clarity. and some texture, because I love these bubbles here, frozen in the ice. And consider using dehaze as well for stuff like this, okay? Because it will pick up anything that's sort of faded out, okay? It does a really good job on this part of the flower. Can you see that? But it's not affecting a lot of the rest. So dehaze does a great job there, right? Now, in terms of editing this thing out on the corner, I do go to Photoshop sometimes for complex removals of things, but in this case, if we just use the content aware erase, get a little bigger brush, and literally just paint over the corner in Lightroom, it does a really good job. You know, if it's not perfect, try refresh, and there we go, right? And I actually think I want to remove these guys down here as well, because they're just kind of sticking in the bottom and they don't really add anything. They're just distracting. Okay, so it's probably a section of something that's been frozen. Okay, that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll see if I can get better bubbles. Okay, perfect. Okay, so notice I didn't have to go to Photoshop, right? I'm just using Lightroom, and the Lightroom cloning tool is greatly improved over what it was years ago. Okay. The other thing about this image is I played around with it a little before we went live, and I thought, what if I rotate it this way? Right? I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Or what if we rotate it that way? And I kind of like it upside down. I don't know why, but I kind of like it upside down. Right? Now, the other thing that I can do is add a vignette. Right? Now, I have some presets made that I use, and literally all they do, this is part of my Lightroom presets pack. Rob, if you could please share the Lightroom presets pack for everybody. And all this does is just arranges some of the settings in the effects panel on post-crop vignette. But on this one, I'm actually going to go the other way and brighten it, right? I like to turn my feather down to 0 and adjust the size and shape of the vignette, right? And then I can adjust the amount. See how it's just kind of fading those corners out like so? Like that. Now, the other thing that's new in Lightroom that we could use here is this lens blur, which is under beta, right? But I want to do a quick application. Now, it's going to pick the subject, right, based on what it thinks is the focal range, but we can adjust it. Okay, so it's analyzing the image. Right now, it's analyzed what it thinks I want to blur. It thinks I want to blur the background, and it's kind of blurring the edges, which is kind of what I wanted. But I want to make sure that that flower is sharp. Right? So I'll just come in a little closer. And if you're not sure which part of the image is in focus, right, the visualize helps. Right? So I want more of the flower. And I'm not getting that part of it. Okay, so if I'm not getting the part that I want, right, I can also paint it into focus. So I can just paint the flower into focus. Like so. Make sure I get these parts. Okay, so this new lens blur tool is pretty good, but I did a video about it and I warned about using resources, and it does tend to use a lot of resources. It's actually crashed my computer, and you can see right now that it's making my computer quite warm, right? I even have a fan on, so I'm using that tool carefully and sparingly, right? Now I might just do a little bit more of that white vignette. Let's see what this one looks like in black and white. Okay, so black and white is now a button. That's kind of neat too. You know, when you change it to black and white, you need to make sure that you maintain your contrast, right? Because we've lost a little bit of that. Right? Like so. And of course, we can adjust based on the original tones. And if we don't know what the tones are, you can use this eyedropper. So I can darken the flower based on the colors. And I think this one actually might look neat with a color grading. So if we do maybe, we could definitely do blue. Okay, something like that. So blue rose, what do you think? All right, question. Can you fix the odd edge on the right? Yeah, I noticed that too. There's like a line here. Well, we could try that with the cloning tool. Let's just try something. Okay, so if I draw a full line, right, it's going to try to fix it. That's not bad. It did an okay job there. So yeah. And it's warning me that I should turn off the healing or the blur before I do cloning, but yes. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of a duplicate there. Okay, so now, because I already painted there, the trick is to get another brush stroke in there, you have to kind of trick it. I'm just going to move it further away. That looks not bad, right? So, yes. And it looks like it's, yeah, it's just the edge of whatever it's sitting in. So, yes, I would, good call, good pickup there. Let's see. Yes, indeed, it is much better. Well, you can go back and give this one another go. And the neat thing, you know, I like about Lightroom that I wish Luminar had was the virtual copies, because we can make a virtual copy of this one and do it in a different technique, right? So if I want to make a virtual copy, it's just Command apostrophe, and it will make, I'm thinking, there we go. And then I can literally just go back to color if I want. I'm frozen. Let's see. So I can go back to color just by undoing the black and white. I got a little bit too much black now. So we can just kind of make it softer, right? We could actually go the other way, you know, and soften it, do clarity on the other side and soften it. That's kind of nice too. I feel like I want more pink. And we've still got this color grading in here. So we could change the color grading to, you know, something more on this scale. Actually, let's try the midtones. Let's do midtones somewhere over here. That's kind of neat. There we go. And then the highlights have gone a little too pink, so we can just counter with a little bit of green. Something like that. So yeah, it does look like an X-ray. And I don't know why, but I like it hanging upside down. I feel like it's hanging, right? Like they're suspended in some sparkling water or something. So there's a lot of different ways that you could go about processing an image like this. And I mentioned that I had a few of these frozen images submitted. So I want to pop back over to Luminar and continue with that theme, because we've got some other frozen leaves and flowers. Okay. This one, let's see whose image was this one. This one was submitted by Vic. Okay, so Vic, are you here? I think Vic was here. So the question that Vic had on this one was, he said, lighting problem, or maybe Vic is Victoria. The lighting problem. And I don't see a problem with it, actually. I think the lighting is good. And I want to mention this to Shelly, because with your flowers, Shelly, you want to get light coming through it. Like, can you see what's happening with these frozen flowers when the light is coming from behind them? Okay. Rob says there's a new poll up. Which do you use the most, Lightroom or Neo? So if you could answer the poll on the screen, I will give us an idea of what everybody is using. So I don't see a problem with this lighting, to be honest. I think it's great. We could go into develop, and if I turn on the clipping warnings, yes, there's stuff clipping, but that's okay. I don't mind that because, I mean, you're making a silhouette of these, you know, kind of these leaves. We can bring the highlights down a little bit so that we've got more color in there, right? And then if we want to make sure we've got some black, right? Now we've got some black here. Just those small adjustments and maybe a little color adjustment because we've got some funky color going on here now. So let's try a color adjustment here. Okay. If you are, if you're trying to do a white balance on something that's pure white, it may not do a good reading for you, right? So you need to do it where there's an actual color. Okay, so I want to get rid of this blue. Something like that. And honestly, I don't even think I would darken it this much. I really like the fact that it's bright. I like the fact that it's bright because the colors are coming through, right? I would use the erase tool on some of these lines, right? I would give it a little bit of sharpness. Oops. I would give it a little bit of sharpness here. And to enhance these things in Luminar, we use the structure, right? So we can boost the structure. And if we want it just on the object, let's see what AI picks up. So Mask AI should pick up flora because it does look for flowers. Okay. So let's see if it picks that up. So it did pick up flora. Let's see. Give it a second. No, that's not accurate. Let's try natural ground. Now, let's try sky. So I don't know what it thinks is sky here, but if it thinks it's the background, well, that's interesting. No. Okay, so Mask AI doesn't know what is in this picture. So I'm just going to paint with mostly 100 opacity. And I'm just going to paint over the icy bits. Okay, so we're getting lots of texture in here, in the leaf, but I don't want it on the background, right? And I'm also not putting it on the stuff on the edge. And then we can copy the mask again. And if I want to get rid of some of that stuff in the background, we can actually go the opposite way and do a minus structure and then paste in the mask, but invert it. Okay, so now this mask is on everything else, right? And I could make sure that it's not on the flowers, right? So I can just make sure, fully erase it. Okay. I'm at 100%. Okay, so now should turn the mask on. See, it's blurring these things on the side, and it's going to be easier to erase them. Okay, and it's blurring this one over here, so it's taking less attention. I can do details. So medium details, look at that. Look at that. When I come in closer, medium details is fantastic. I love it. I use medium details a lot, right? As I mentioned, small details tends to make things look more grainy, so I usually keep that one low. Right? Large details, just see what they do. Take the sliders up. See what they do. Right? And I'm going to mask it in so that paste it so that it is only on these guys again. Okay? I'm going to do a better job with my brush too. Should have a bigger brush. So keyboard shortcut, bracket, square bracket makes the right square bracket is bigger, left square bracket is smaller. And then I'm just going to copy this mask again. Okay, so right off the bat, there we go. Lots more texture. Okay, and then I would just use the erase tool, and now we have very little to erase, right? Because I blurred it. It should do a really good job. So people forget about the erase tool now that Gen Erase is out and they're all crazy Gen Erasing things. But I find that the Gen Erase tool is still a little bit hit and miss because it tends to put things in. Like if I tried Gen Erase on this, it would put something weird in the corner, I'm sure. An alien or something, right? And I think I'm going to crop this one a little bit, just from this corner because it's got this stuff down here. So I'm just going to simplify the corner, right? I want to keep this. I'd have to go freeform. Actually, let's come into that bottom stem because then it gives it a base to anchor to. There we go. Something like that. Just to simplify, because I'm getting rid of that white pocket on the corner. Okay, I talked about that in the cropping video. And I think let's just do something else. I'm going to flip this. Okay, so now I feel like things are moving that way. Okay, so when you read left to right, top to bottom, right? When you're doing abstracts like this, play around. Like what happens if we do, different crops? Play around with it. Photograph it different ways. Flip it different ways. And if you shot it straight down, put it any way that looks good, right? Play around with it. I kind of like it that way. Okay, now I would probably do some mystical on this. So even after we added all of the nice sharpness, I would do this mystical to give it this nice glow, right? Or let's try Orton effect, which is one of my favorites as well. The Orton effect tends to brighten everything, so I always need to turn it down. Okay, but let's see what happens. Ooh, I like what's happening there. Look at that. So we still got nice detail, but it's doing some really cool things, right? So I don't see that there was ever a lighting problem on this image. I think your lighting was perfect, Vic. Maybe he'll tell us if he's here, or if Vic is here, if they'll tell us. I don't know if Vic is Victoria or Victor. So how did you shoot them if you are here? Tell us. I have a feeling it was straight down. I have a feeling it was straight down. If you want to do something like this, see if you can, like if you're doing, because with yours, Shelly, for example, I know you said you tried to prop it up with the little rubber thing. Is that like a jar opener? We have those too. If you get like a slide viewer, right? I don't know if I can find one or not. See, go on to like, I'm going to look on Amazon and I'll see if I can find one for you real quick. Like, an old little light table for slide viewing. Light table for slides. I'm just searching this on Amazon. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. I will share a link with you. Let me just grab this and put this in the chat for you. Jen says she propped up and used natural light. Okay, there you go. So you could just put it in the window. This is what I found on Amazon. So you see here, oops, I don't know what that was. That's what I found on Amazon, right? So it's just a light box that you plug in for viewing old slides and negatives, and you could put it right on top of that. You could also use your iPad, but you just have to protect it from liquid or a tablet, something that projects light, right? You could also, you could get a piece of glass, right? Get a piece of glass that's bigger than your iPad and just use your iPad as the bottom. But if you want something bigger than that, put your piece of glass on a couple of bricks or something, and you just have to light the bottom. So you can literally light it with anything, a table lamp or so on. But if you want to practice this kind of thing, just make sure that if you're using anything electronic with water on top, that you make sure you don't fry it or fry yourself. So safety first. Lightbox photos are big here. Yeah. So, it's fun, right? And when we're, in the winter in the Northern Hemisphere, and It's something fun to do, right? Okay, so that was a lovely image. Thanks for that, Vic. So let's take a look at yours, Shelley, while we're here, because, you know, similar kind of concept, right? So can you see the difference with the light coming through the background? So the question that Shelley had is, would you try to clone this out or crop it? In this case, I would try and crop it, right? So I would literally just come in super close on this one. You know, I might even want to fill the frame with it and just go like that. So let's try something super close, and then we still have to deal with those corners. Okay, let's do that. And same thing again. Okay, so we're back in Luminar. We've got some camera profiles. Ooh, camera portrait is nice. Look what it does to the oranges. Camera standard. I think landscape is the winner. Look at that. Look at the difference. Just the camera profile. Okay. Now curves. Okay. I'm going to turn the clipping warnings on. I want to clip the whites. Okay. So see how that background is starting to clip? See how that's starting to clip? And when I turn it off, the clipping warnings, see how that background has almost disappeared? Almost. Look at that. If I keep going, it's gone. Okay. Now, I don't think I want to go all that way, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you a trick. So we're going to go quite bright. I'm going to lift the shadows a bit to brighten those flowers. And I'm not sure that the flowers are sharp either. Right? So you have to be really careful when you're focusing. Oh, yes, they are. When you're focusing on stuff like this, that you don't focus on the top of the ice, but the thing inside the ice. Right. And the further into the ice it's frozen, the more trouble you'll have, because your camera will want to focus on the top of the ice. Okay. So try and freeze the things shallow with the items close to the top. Right. So this green one just doesn't look sharp to me. Okay. So now see how I've gotten a lot of that, rid of a lot of that. Okay. We could adjust the white balance. Let's see if we can get a better white balance. Let's shift it a little bit. That's not bad. Okay. So just with the develop, we've come a long way. Now here's the trick I'm going to show you. Okay. There's a couple of different ways we can do this, because I'm actually going to uncrop this. Let's just uncrop this because I want to show you it on the full image. So look at what's happening. Okay. We've almost gotten rid of that. So if we do, I want to do develop again, right? But if I go back into here now, it's going to give me develop raw again. So I'm just going to do structure and give it some structure and then just mask it to the flowers. So I'm just going to use a radial gradient. Okay, so remember it's on the outside. I have to fix that, right? So wherever it's red is where the structure is applying. So I need to invert that. And let's just make it a little bigger. There we go. Something like that. And I'm going to copy it. Okay, so see how we're sharpening that stuff up now. Sharpening up the flowers. Okay, but I've got the inside selected as my mask. Now I'm going to go back to develop, and I'm going to punch the whites until this stuff at the bottom disappears. And exposure, remember exposure is grays. Okay, then I'm going to paste the mask and invert it. Okay, now what's happening is I'm getting a lot of kind of spillover, so I'm just going to fix that. Right, I'm going to fix that by erasing it off of the flowers. So I want to get the flowers fully erased. Okay. So see, it's getting rid of most of the bottom. And if I want to go in a little bit, let's just paint around the edge and get a little bit of this grayness of the edge coming off as well. So I'm just coming into the ice with a brush that's soft, and I'm painting at like 38%. So I'm not painting at full opacity. I'm just making a second pass here, right? Okay, so see how now it's sort of floating? And now we don't have much erasing to do, okay? Now I can just use erase. Let's come in. Now I don't know how good it's going to do on this, but we're going to give it a go, right? Cross your fingers. If that doesn't work, it's easy to clone out, okay? I'll actually show both ways because see? Easy. So now we've got rid of it, right? I'm actually just going to undo that and show you how to do it with the cloning tool. So if you go to cloning, right? Wherever you click is the source, okay? So I'm going to clone from below up, okay? So I'm just putting the mouse up above where I'm cloning or where the source is, and I'm cloning up, right? Now, if I want to continue cloning, I can actually keep going and get rid of that edge like that. And then just choose a new source here and then come in. So I'm just trying to minimize the edge of the ice. So it kind of tricks everybody into thinking, it's not a circle of ice. See that? I'm just faking the edge missing. And I'm constantly changing the source. So I'm holding my finger on the option key. So I'm picking a source here, click, and then I'm cloning down, okay? Do we have a video on cloning in Luminar, Rob? I know we do in the course, but do we have one on YouTube? Okay. So I'm coming in quite a bit here. So I'm just getting rid of the edge. And the reason that I'm constantly reselecting the cloning part is because when you clone from one area, always from the same area, you end up looking like it's copied. All right, see that? Now, I feel like I want to rotate it, maybe. And let's just see what it does for composition. It probably comes in. Well, that's not what I want. Do we like it rotated? I kind of do. Let's just come in a little closer. I can't decide if I like it rotated or not. But there you go, right? So we got something that is obvious, and now we're just playing tricks on the mind, right? You could do things like a texture overlay, right? If I decide not to crop it, maybe let's just come in a little bit. If I decide not to crop it or rotate it, I feel like I want more of a rectangle, like so. We could add a texture overlay, okay? Remember your layers in Luminar Neo. You could also duplicate this layer. D on the keyboard duplicates the layer, or it should. Give it a second. It's thinking. There we go. Okay, so duplicate the layer, right? And then when you play with the blend modes, you can get some really neat things, okay? So multiply will intensify and darken things, right? As you can see, right? But look at lighten or screen, okay? So we could do things like, you know, add some faded out, make it look faded out and frosty. So that's kind of cool too, right? So we got lots of things we can do just by changing the layer blend mode and the opacity, right? So I'm kind of fading it out. We could add a texture overlay. This one may work really great. And I mean, if you have another image of ice and snow, that would be perfect. Let me just see. Let me just see what I've got. This blue one might work okay. So if we add a blue texture, I still feel like I want to rotate this image. What does everybody feel? Vertical, horizontal? Put V or H in the chat. Tell me which way you think I should crop this one. The cloning is remarkable. Signed up for Lightroom Luminar course. Awesome. Thanks, Shelley. Okay, why is it not adding my texture? Come on. It's still thinking. There we go. It's thinking about it. Still thinking. So I've got a horizontal, a vertical, horizontal, horizontal, horizontal. Okay, so we might end up cropping it. Or rotating it. But remember, if I rotate, I got to rotate all of the layers. So I'm not sure how that's going to go at this point. Right. So this one here, I'm just going to do fill or stretch. Okay. So let's just fill. Okay. So the overlay, when we do it full opacity, obviously it covers the image, but let's just play with the blend modes. So that one might be kind of neat when we lower the opacity. Now it looks like it's painted on. That's kind of neat, actually. Right, so darken. I think that's the mode. Yeah, I think that's it right there. And then if we don't want it on the flowers as much, I think just subtle. But the color looks really good, doesn't it? Right? I think just subtle. Let's put it a little bit stronger. And if you want to mask it, okay, remember you're erasing or masking off of the texture texture layer, not the bottom one. So I'm just gonna erase it maybe 50% off the flowers. So I'm not lifting my mouse. I'm just going to do one pass of 50% erase. So I'm still getting some texture on the flowers, but not as much. Okay. And then let's turn it down a tiny bit. The other thing we can do is we can actually blur the texture. So we're on the texture layer. Remember, we could go and do a blur using any of these blurs that are in the blur tool now, which is amazing. The blur tool is absolutely amazing. You know, so we can create some stripes. And I kind of like it, actually. Maybe just a little bit less structure. Just like that. Right? And then if we decide, okay, we don't want this image, we can hide the middle layer and the flowers spark up. We can lower the opacity of the painted layer. We can turn off this blur. I mean, there's so much you can do. Like, this is a really fun image to play with. So let's just see what happens if I go and rotate this bottom one. Because if I go to crop it and I rotate, I did rotate everything. Ha, awesome. So there we go. I kind of like it. Maybe the blue one should be on the bottom. I think the blue one makes better base. How's that? So before and after. What do you think, Shelley? Okay. Aha, Jen. That's what I did too. That was my thinking. No, there is not a stamp command in Luminar. You cannot merge layers in Luminar. So anything you do, you can change the order of them, but you cannot stamp them together. So if you wanted to mask all of these together or do something to this as to what you see here, you'd have to export it as a new image, import that one into Luminar, and then edit that one. So it's not as comprehensive, right? Let's just see what happens if I change the layer order. See, that's interesting in itself. If I change the layer order and put the painting in the middle, and then I put this one on top, it changes the look. Okay? But that was a fun image to play with. It does look like a watercolor. Well, there's your assignment, Shelly, for the week, is to try and make that. Okay? Try and make that. So that was a fun one. The other one that she sent me was done on a black background. And I'm not going to edit that one because we've already done a couple of frozen ones. But see the difference here where light coming through the background would make a huge difference, right? And even if you've got it, set up like this, just get some light behind it, right? So shine a flashlight or anything, just some glow coming from behind it. You'll get a lot more sparkle. And if you want to see, what that looks like when you're dealing with, wrong keyboard shortcut again. When you're dealing with, light coming through something, this image of Steve's is a perfect example because like he's got some ice where the light is coming through. There was another one. Let me see. Was it one of these? Yeah, look at the sun. See how the light is just coming through there? Really cool, right? So I actually wanted to edit one of those for Steve as well, just for fun, because I know he's an amazing photographer. He posts amazing photos in our group and so on. I wanted to do a couple of them to show you. So if you're dealing with snow or ice or something like this, you can affect the object. We're back to Lightroom now. You can affect the object differently than everything else in the picture, okay? Specifically, this one is something I had in mind because I want to bring out some great texture in here. So I'm going to start with camera profile again. Ooh, I like that one. I don't know what that is. I think that was portrait. I think that was portrait profile, but I like the color that it gave me. So I'm going to go with portrait. Okay, then we're going to do the whites and the blacks. Oops, I missed that one. Okay, so look at the difference in the color. So just changing the camera profile and the whites and the blacks, we have a lot more punch, right? But I want to show you this one because if I bring the clarity and the texture up, look at how the ice looks. Amazing, right? And in this case, the water looks really cool as well. But what if I want to keep the water looking smooth, okay? So I'm going to leave these neutral, okay? I'm going to leave these neutral, and I'm going to do mask, subject, and background. So what I've done is I've set myself a preset that does subject selection and background selection just as a mask and names them appropriately with no edits done to them. So I can just click this preset and it masks my subject and my background. Okay. Let me change this to red so we can see it better. Okay. Actually, it was better green. Okay. So let's now do the subject. So remember, I just showed you the texture and the clarity. So clarity, texture, looks amazing, right? See that? Looks amazing. I'm getting a little bit of noise in there, so I'm just going to bring that up as well. Okay. Then in the background, we can go the opposite way. We can actually do less texture and a little bit less clarity. So now the water seems smoother, okay? See the difference with the masks? Like so. You could take it further even. Let's just go all the way, just so you can see the full effect. You see that? I almost never use clarity all the way down because it just makes kind of a blurry mess. But look at that, even sharpness. Okay. Now we can do an edge vignette. And look at that ice shine. See that? I'd probably crop this one a little bit. It's right in the middle, and I feel like I want more of the shadow and less of this bright area up here. So something like that, maybe. Like so. We can also darken the background and then pay attention to the edges. Like I would do stuff like I would get rid of this spot up here just for fun. Okay. like that. So again, watching the edges. When you see this little red mark here, when you see this little red mark here, it means that something of your masks need to be reselected. So just click the 3 dots on any of them and do update AI masks. Okay, so I think that happened when I cropped. Okay, so if you see this little red mark, it means you need to update your AI masks. Right? I can also darken the background or the highlights too. So I want to darken the background. And let's punch the subject up a little bit more. Okay, we could even give it a color. So if we want to add more sort of this teal color, like so. Okay, so look at the difference. So the light's coming behind it again, remember? So before, after. I'm not happy with that cropping. I feel like it needs more space in front of it. There we go. I know it's an inanimate object, but I feel like it's looking to the left. Okay, so before and after. Pareidolia. Yes, please tell me what pareidolia is like. Let's think about what themes we want to have for the coming weeks. We want to pick a few themes, and I'm going to keep sending it out by email because we seem to get really good response that way. I've still got some spooky images left, but I don't want to repeat things right away. So what else can we do in the next little while? What are you guys interested in if I send you a challenge to go photograph something? What are you interested in photographing, or what kinds of images do you have? What do you have that you want edited, or that you need help editing? What is the most challenging edits? So put some ideas in the chat for us, please. Right? How does that? Oh, somebody sees a face. Oh, I see it now. Marguerite sees a face. I totally see the face. Yeah, right here. There's a little eyeball right here, and it's a little small. It does look like a weird fish with no tails. So that was a really cool edit, right? Now, let's see what happens if I copy all of these edits, except the cropping and the healing, okay, and paste it onto the next image, which is completely different. So remember, it's set to find the subject and the background. So I'm going to paste, and let's just see what happens. Okay, so it went really dark. This image is dark to begin with, so we need to brighten it. And we're going to lighten the vignette. But overall, it actually was not too bad, right? It's a little too much black. So a few tweaks aside, it's not so bad, right? The other thing that I want to do is do a sky selection and darken the sky. So I would do the sky separately. Now notice that it's blurring the background, remember? So this background is blurring everything. So I might scale that back a little bit on this one. Right, not so much blur, a little bit of blur, but not so much. Right, subject looks good. And sky, we can bring that down. We can also adjust the color. So if we want to make it warmer, we can do that. Ooh, pink's nice. How about that? Now, do you see I'm going to turn the vignette off here because I want to show you something that's happening. Right? Can you see the dark corners here? Okay, so this is under lens corrections. Okay, so there is a lens correction applied here. We're going to remove chromatic aberration. Okay, but I want to do this vignetting here because see how the corners of the image get darker? So some lenses, especially wider ones, tend to darken corners sometimes, right? So same thing here. I'm just going to brighten the corners, make sure that it's even. So I'm trying to get rid of these dark corners here, and it could be that there's a filter on here that's causing a slight edge vignette. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. Like so. And the other thing I'm going to give Steve a heck for is he's clearly photographed this with a tripod because of the slow exposure, but the horizon's crooked. So if you're going to do a tripod, Steve, let's get the horizon straight. So I'm just going to straighten it like so. Okay. Now I can put the vignette back on. Okay, so I wanted to get rid of those corners that were darkening too much. Okay, see that? I'm going to go in more. And what I'm noticing is it's darkening again on this corner. So what I might do is just try to compensate with a graduated filter and just bring the exposure up a little bit, because it seems to be I'm still getting that dark corner. Just right there. See that? I'm just trying to get out of the way here. I'm just trying to minimize that corner. See that? And sometimes filters can do that as well. So he may have used a drop-in filter or something like that. Okay, so there's a before and after. I might even go darker on the sky now that I've done that. Okay, so I would rename this one. I wish when you selected the sky, it would automatically name the mask for you, but it doesn't do that. I wish it did. There we go. Right? Now, how would you crop this one? I feel like there's, the horizon is, on the third level, kind of. This guy is almost off center, but I'm going to go freeform cropping here and come a little bit in on the bottom and a little bit in here. Actually, I want to come in on this side because I feel like I want more space for it to flow to. I want more space on that side of it. And yes, I'm putting it in the middle, but let's just see how that plays. I still feel like it's crooked. Hard to tell this one because I can't see the exact horizon, but let's try. That looks better, right? So bringing it in a little bit closer just focuses in more on that ice flow. Good question, Donnell. I don't know. Steve, are you still there? Where did you take these? We could ask him. I'll ask him. Let's see. Oh, he is there. Neutral density filter vignette. Okay, so I was right. A filter caused that. So sometimes if you are using a wide lens and you stack your filters, the filters will actually start cutting off the edges of your image. Rob's putting some ideas for topics. Do you have travel photos of iconic places? And it could be an iconic place in your area. How about that as an idea, right? So famous places. Do you have the Empire State Building? Do you have the Taj Mahal? Do you have London Bridge? Do you have the Grand Canyon, right? Whatever you have. How about bridges? Bridges is a good one. You know what else photographers like to shoot is laundry. we always like to photograph laundry. What else do we like to photograph, guys? Laundry, doors, bicycles, and cats, right? So he says it is Iceland Diamond Beach. Cool. Do you like my edit, Steve? I'm curious to see how that compares to your edit. Yeah, send me an email. Show me how you edited this one. Okay, we don't have any other suggestions for fall colors, John says. A little late for fall here, John. We're into winter already, so depends on where you are, but maybe people have some fall colors, yeah. Sunrise, sunset. Okay, we did that one, but yes, we could do that. Fungi, okay. Some people have already submitted mushrooms in the past, so sure, okay. Rob, are you taking notes? The edge darkening will still occur if you use too large of a filter with step down rings. Depends. You'd have to see if your step down ring is the only one that is the same size as your lens. Also, if you have a UV filter on and then you put another one on front, you're stacking the depth of filters. So take the UV filter off as well if you're getting cut off. So yeah, great ideas. Blue hour, golden hour. We haven't done blue hour. This is kind of blue hour, but it's kind of sunset as well. Thanks, Steve. I think we tried to ask for sports and action shots, and it was not popular. What do you guys think? Okay. Do we have time for another one or two? Let's see. Okay, time to go back to Luminar, I think. All right, let's see what else I've got in Luminar. I want to do whims. Okay, so Wim asks about how to make this picture more exciting. Okay, so let's go into Luminar and see if we can do that. That is their program of choice. Okay. So develop, it is not a raw file. Okay, so you can see that it is a JPEG. So we don't have the raw to work with, okay, which is fine. In this case, it's a good exposure, but we have limited options as we've mentioned. So we don't have the camera profile and you don't have the white balance options here, okay? So I'm going to try white balancing on this frost on the edge there. Okay, so notice how it warmed it all up. Now this is a preference, okay? So we can warm it up so that the brown of the leaf comes out more, or we can leave it a bit blue or make it even bluer, right? Or we could even go with something black and white. So I'm going to try the warmer version first, right? Then I'm going to check the curves and bring in the blacks and the whites. Okay, so notice I'm bringing the curve in quite far and it looks like it's coming to the edge, but there's still barely anything clipping, right? The white starts clipping right away, so I'm not going to come in too much on that one. I've also been asked questions about, well, when to use these sliders versus curves. Well, the difference is how far you have to go. Okay, so if I want to add some black, I'm all the way down to the bottom on black and I still got nothing clipping, okay? But I got nowhere else to go. It's like Spinal Tap. When you go to 10, then you go, where else can you go? You go to 11. Those of our generation will know what I'm talking about. But notice on the curves, I can go really far. In fact, I can make the whole image black, right? So it's just, curves allows you to go to more extremes. That's all. I think I even see a spider web in there, which is kind of cool. Look at this. There's a spider web there. Neat. There's some neat stuff going on here, right? So I really like the idea of black. Look at the black, right? Like so. So already, just by doing this white balance adjustment and the blacks and the whites, I haven't even done much to the whites, it's already making that leaf stand out, okay? So where it was gray, right, now that dark background really helps it to stand out, okay? I'm going to give it a little bit of sharpness here. And notice we don't have the option of chromatic aberration here. That's only for raw. So that's good for develop. Okay. Now I definitely want to do some structure. So let's come in a little bit. It's also got a bit of noise. If I look at this image in Lightroom, I don't have the original metadata, unfortunately. It looks like he's exported a JPEG, so I don't have the photography or the metadata. So I can't tell you what it was shot at, but I'm guessing a higher ISO because there's a little bit of noise here. So I'm going to give it some structure. See how it brings out noise in the background? I don't know if you guys can see that. See how structure increases the noise, right? So you have to be careful. Oh, I like what Boost is doing in here. So I am going to mask it just Actually, let's try the Mask AI and see if it finds flora. Let's just see if it recognizes that. Danelle says, just a thought. Okay, Blue Hour is good. You have a couple of sports photos. You know, what do landscape photographers like to photograph? How much more black could it be? Well, how long is a piece of string, right? How long is a piece of string? Okay, so flora, let's see what it goes. Aha! Okay, we're pretty close. Look at that. Okay, so I can do flora, and then I'm just going to erase it from the bits that I don't want here. Like that. I should be at 100% strength. Okay, so I don't want that. And it's pretty close. So now I'm going to copy that because that was a pretty good one. Right? And then I'm going to use the blur tool and I'm going to drag it up. Right now we're just on Gaussian. Say it's blurring everything. Okay. I'm going to paste in the mask and of course invert it. Now there are some edges that need to be fixed because you can see that it's not masking perfectly around the edge, right? So it didn't get in there. So I would go in a little closer with the brush and do a little better job. Right? So I would go in here and get, oops, no, I want to paint. You could spend a lot of time masking these things, right? But if you really want to do a good job, spend the time, right? So if this image matters to you, I'm just going to do this portion here. If this image matters, do a good job, okay? Okay, so what I want to do with this one here is now that I've got it sort of masked, we can try. Is it masking the background? Oh, what have I done? Oh, I think I screwed up the masking. No? Okay. All right, let's just brush in a bit more. Some reason it's not blurring what I want. It's doing what I want. Okay, so spend the time masking. It's got part of the leaf as well. It's not perfect. Yeah, that part right there. You have to watch carefully. Not sure it's doing what I want. Yeah, it's blurring the background. Needs a lot more masking. Well, I was hoping to get more of a twist. I wanted to get rid of some of this stuff in the background here. So definitely I need to erase. Let's just go with a bigger one. I'm just going to do it soft like this. because I want it to blend soft, right? So it's not looking like it's cut out because it looks cut out right now. See that hard edge? Just trying to fix it. So my original AI mask was not as good as I hoped. Okay, this is where I'm going to need to fix it. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to copy that one. That looks better. So you know I'm just getting the background, right? So before and after. Now can we rotate this one? Let's play with the crop a little bit. What does that look like? What does that look like? Right? I haven't decided. Let's see what it looks like that way. It's kind of neat too. I almost feel like I like this one or coming in from the bottom. Like that. Because it minimizes this bit over here. I feel like when that was on the bottom, it was too prominent. Right? Let's put a vignette on here. Let's just darken the edges a little bit. And I think this one, as I said, would be a really nice black and white. So let's do a black and white. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay. Look at that. Beautiful. Love it. So that's how to make that one punch. I'm still not sold on the whole flipping, cropping thing. Haven't decided yet. See what I mean about this at the bottom, though? How about that? How about we just flip it that way? I kind of like that, actually. I also thought about a toning on this one, or a mood. We could do toning or mood. Mood will give us some blue. There's some nice blue tones here. I like blue velvet. It's kind of one of my favorites. Look at that. Neat. All right. I just made blue. Hey, Thomas. Nice to see you. All right. So what do people think about that edit? And it's gone a little dark, so I probably brighten it a little bit after I added the mood tool. I want to see what happens if I remove the black and white, actually, and then add the mood tool. Okay, so look at this. That's kind of cool. So now it's almost like a duotone. See that? A little too much contrast. These are some of the blue LUTs that Skylum had a while back. They were kind of blue and orange. Ooh, that one's kind of neat. Crunchy duotone. Crunchy duotone. Okay, so remember, the higher you go, the more it applies, which is kind of neat. So if we only go part way, we still have a little bit of the color left. I like that. Great options here. Yeah, this is a really great image. Really nice image. You like the golden tones? Okay. All right. We could play with something else. I love mood, you know, and you could apply mood differently to the background, to the subject. I love the LUTs that are available in here. And honestly, you know, you can use a LUT in Photoshop as well, but I never did. I never used one. It wasn't something that I did. It was kind of more, I discovered that with Luminar Neo. Let's see if any of these work. That's kind of neat. And then you could go completely warm. Now it looks green in the background, right? So you decide which way you want to go with it. That's kind of purple, right? Kind of purple. I usually bring the amount up to 50 because then you could see when you're doing this and hovering over, you can see a better idea of what it's going to look like. And then if you like the general idea, then you can just dial it down. Sepia is another one that I use a lot, right? So then we got more of a brown. Ooh, smoky is nice on that one. Look at that. Smoky's kind of nice. This one is more of a matte look, which is kind of neat as well, right? So lots of options here. I think I like the blue one. Yeah, I think I like this one. And we could add a texture on that one too if we wanted as well, right? Now, when we added the texture on the white image, right? Remember, I added it as a darken overlay. Let's use that same texture, this blue one, this blue wall. And when I apply this one, so if I do darken, it's only going to go over the snowflake or the frost. But let's go the other way and it will go on the background. See that? So let's try soft light and then just dial it down. So now we're getting a texture in the background without it applying on the leaf, and we don't have to mask it, okay? So there's a textured background, just like that. And it adds more blue as well to the background because it's blue. Trippy. It's not trippy. It's called Photoshop blend modes or blend modes Photoshop. Shouldn't say Photoshop. There we go. I got the right keyboard shortcut this time. So how are we doing? I think we're good for today, right? We've done lots of examples. Let's see what else I did that was a good example. We did some frozen things. We did Steve's. We did a few Steve's. And let's see what else. Robert had sent in some images as well, and the question that he had was how to make them more interesting. So I want to address this as also, right? He sent this for Luminar, but I'm just going to show you the image and we're talking about it. So it's the same issue of exposure once again, because when you point your camera at the snow, okay, so if you're out photographing in the next little while and you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you've got snow, you need to use your exposure compensation, okay? Again, share that. I think I did an article on exposure compensation recently, Rob. Did I do one on that? You need to use your exposure compensation because what's happening is the camera thinks this is gray and it's not. It needs to be brighter than gray. So you need to tell it +1. See, I'm going to +1.25 here, right, on the scale. You need to tell your camera +1, meaning I want a stop more light when I'm photographing this. So when you are pointing your camera at a scene, also what metering mode you use makes a difference. Try and avoid, I think we have another one on metering modes, Rob. Share that as well. Try and use average metering more. Don't use spot. Unless you are an absolute expert at exposure, don't use spot metering, okay? I don't use spot metering. Okay, so to make this an image like this more interesting, we've clearly got, you know, some tracks and things. So what you need to do to make your images more interesting is get closer a lot of times, and also think about the lighting, right? So here we have very spotty kind of lighting. It's not really enhancing or adding to the subject. So what if you photographed it from down low, right? What if you photographed it, it's up high looking down, but what if you photographed it from down low, right? So this is more interesting, right? All that stuff up there is not interesting, right? We can add clarity, we can add all kinds of stuff in here to make it, you know, punch it up, right? I'm still getting some whites clipping, but that's because we've got spotty lighting. So if we try and correct for the whites here, these parts go gray, right? So I'm going to correct for the most of the snow. This is what it should look like. And this bit is overexposed, okay? So to photograph snow, you want to have light coming across the snow, just like anything else that has texture. Right? This is a good example. This one's got some nice texture, right? So if I play the same kind of settings here, this is a JPEG, but you'll get the same effect. So if I do shift double click, come on, Lightroom. See, Lightroom is slow on me today too. Give it some clarity, give it some texture. Well, maybe it's not going anywhere because it thinks it's got enough black, right? That's got a little more texture and it's more interesting because it's closer up. So a lot of times, there's another article for you, Rob. I'm keeping him busy today finding articles on how to take more interesting photos. And one of the tips is broaden your horizons, you know, try new things and just experiment, right? Not just with photography, but try new things, because you might be introduced to a whole different world, you know, a different culture, all those kinds of things. Let me just see if there's another one here that has texture. Yeah, see, I'm not seeing light coming across the snow. Okay, here's a good example. This is one of Sheila's, and I think I've already edited this one to some degree. Right? Look at the intense blue of that sky. Now, I don't know if she used a polarizing filter, but you can see it's really, really dark, okay? But I did the whites. I increased the whites because the original image was, again, gray, right? So the camera compensated, thinking there's too much light. Now, look at how the highlights, right? But look at the snow. I want to point this out because the snow picks up more texture. So where's the light coming from in here? Can you guys tell where the light is? Let's look at the shadows. So if we zoom in even further, if you're not sure where the light is coming from in your scene, look at the shadows. Okay, here's this little tree right here. There's a shadow. Okay, so the shadow's going that way. So the sun is over to the left. Okay, it's actually straight left. You can see this little stick, straight left. Sun here, blobby thing here, straight left. If anything, it's slightly behind. Okay, but most part, the sun is absolutely directly on the left. Right, and you can see the difference it makes in the texture. Okay, because if I increase texture, okay, look at the difference. Okay, look at how much texture there is there. Right, and that has to do with the light coming across. Do you see that chromatic aberration? Look at it. It's actually exciting. Can you see that? That's a great example of chromatic aberration. Okay, so that's where you need to use this to correct it. It's that purple. Usually it's a purple fringe, but sometimes you'll get red and sort of cyan color on opposite edges. And that's just the lens not focusing the colors on the same point. And Lightroom has a checkbox and Luminar has a checkbox in Develop Raw, right? But look at the difference in the texture on that snow versus snow where the light is even. Let's see where there's one that's light is even. Okay, even this one. Okay, so it's kind of an overcast day, right? So when that's too much zooming. When we zoom in, see there's no shadows. We got chromatic aberration again. So whatever lens she's using. Right? See how there's no texture? So even though I could pick up, I've already got the texture and the clarity cranked on this one, and there's no texture. All you're getting is grain. There's a tiny bit of texture here, right? But it's snowing and it's overcast versus the other one. Where's the one that I just did? Well, I've lost it. Oh, there we go. Versus this one, right? Look at the texture in the snow. Okay. You also have to be careful with images like this if you've used a polarizer, because your sky can go darker on one side than the other. This is actually really cool, and I think it would make a really neat black and white because of this. So I'm going to turn this one into black and white while we're here. Okay, look at the contrast. Now the sky goes black. How cool is that? And we can even emphasize that when we go to the black and white mix and take the blues down even further. So see how there's lots of blue in the snow? Look at that. I don't want to go fully black. And there's a spot in the sky we're going to have to fix. But how dramatic is that? I feel like it's crooked. There we go. I feel like the house is leaning a little bit. Something like that. Cool black and white. Very dramatic. Okay, so if you are, you can go photograph in black and white. And if you want to practice that, snow, like I said, winter scenes and snow make great subjects for black and white. If you've not done a lot of black and white photography, still, okay, here's some tips for you. There should be another article, Rob, on dramatic black and white photos and how to photograph in black and white, or how to see in black and white. I can't remember what it's called, sorry. So when you're photographing, if you're not used to shooting in black and white, or thinking in that way, set your camera to RAW and set your camera to the monochrome color profile. So you'll see a black and white on the camera, but when you bring it back to edit it later, you'll still have the color information so that you can do the adjustments with these sliders, okay? Because if you photograph it in monochrome, you don't have the ability to adjust how the colors portray come out in black and white later. So don't photograph it in monochrome JPEG. If you photograph in RAW on monochrome mode, you'll still get the color information back in the processor. I hope that helps. Awesome, Dano. Lots of reading. You don't have to read it all at once, but yeah, bookmark them, come back later, read them all for reference. So there's lots of great ideas for topics. Let's pick a theme before we end up today. Let's see. Why don't we do blue hour? Okay, let's do blue hour next time. And just to be clear on what blue hour is, I'm going to find a collection here. So blue hour is the time right after sunset, okay? So this is what blue hour looks like. Okay, these are all blue hour images. So it's after the sun has gone down, but not quite pitch black, right? This is what blue hour looks like. So you might think they're night photos, right? And when we talk about doing night photography, most of the time I'm talking about this blue hour, okay? But let's expand it. You know, if you don't have anything that you photograph during blue hour, a photo of anything blue. So how about our theme is blue, simply blue. And if you have blue hour photos, great. Blue hour in the city ends up with these great images like this that have the complementary colors. Complementary means opposite on the color wheel. So you get the orange of the city lights and the blue of the sky, which make a really great dynamic, right? See, there's the difference, okay? So this is after blue hour and the sky is dark. Can you see that? That's before blue hour. That's too early, right? That's blue hour. So I took those for those examples. You could do long exposures. There's another good example. That's blue hour. That's too late. See, the sky is now black. And after blue hour, once you've passed blue hour, if you have photo pills, it will tell you the nautical blue hour time. Once nautical blue hour is done, your sky will look like this, and there's nothing you can do about it processing. If I lift the shadows, it's just going to be gray and grainy. Okay? Blue hour, not blue hour. Can you see the difference? Big difference, right? And all that is a little bit later. Let me just see if I can find the times on those when that was taken. So this one was photographed at, according to the timestamp on the image, at 7:59 p.m. And this one is at 8:20. Okay, so literally 20 minutes later. Okay, 20 minutes and it's done. And the closer you are to the equator, the quicker blue hour goes, right? So you have to really get out there. All right, so I hope that helps. Blue hour. Rob's got some articles. Oh, find a blue hour article, please, Rob. One more. I'm keeping him busy today, aren't I? I read about a camera hand tool that lets you look around to see what everything looks like when you hold. Yes, I think you're talking about photo pills. It does have an augmented AI. That's what it's called. There's a night AI, and if you hold it up to the sky, if you're in a place that you're going to be photographing and you set it to nighttime, you can change the time. You can say, well, what time is the Milky Way going to appear? And then you can literally set it to go, okay, where's it going to appear in the sky? So you know which way to photograph, and you can find a background and all that stuff. PhotoPills is quite involved. They've got a large YouTube channel, and I would suggest getting PhotoPills and then going to watch some of their videos, because I think that's what you're talking about. Yes, next week's theme is blue. Blue hour. The blues, somebody playing guitar. Sure. Blue animals, blue things. Damselfly, sure, blue. Awesome, Marguerite. Thanks for coming, as always. A small lens. No, I'm not familiar with that one then, Dano. If you find it, let me know. And there's a last article for you on sunset and blue hour photos. There's another one, Rob. There's another one on blue hour. So I'm sure you can find another one. We've got lots on blue hour. There's a whole section on our website about night photography and blue hour. So check that out. So I'm going to end there. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. And if you are here for the first time, I hope you come back next week. And all of you that are here, I'd love for you to promise to bring a friend with you. So who are you bringing with you next week? Let's see if we can double the amount of people we have attending and make it a really interesting discussion. Not that you all aren't interesting, but let's see how many countries we can get here, how many different countries attendees we can have, and let's see how many guests you can all bring. So that's your challenge for next week. Give me some blue photos and bring a guest. I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor, and we'll see you next week for Blue Hour. Take care.